Welcome to those who have joined us today for a drop-in session around the early TRE adoption rapid funding call. So today we're just going to give a bit of a presentation and then have a Q&A session afterwards. And I'll hand over to Fergus MacDonald, the Deputy Director of the DARE UK programme, to take us through the agenda for today.
I mean, to be honest, I don't have a Christmas jumper at all, which is blasphemy, I suppose. So sorry, Carol. But yeah, morning, everyone. Welcome. I mean, there's nothing much for me to say, to be honest. We're just going to do a bit of a presentation from the team here, just to give you a bit of a deeper insight into essentially what the ask is, right, in terms of TRE adoption, and then basically open up the floor for any questions you have, whether those are questions about sort of the content of the presentation and the work that's going to happen, or more administrative questions around the call and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of how it's going to work. Please feel free to put your hand up, and I'll corral us all as we go. So I'll hand over to you, Em. I think I'll be sharing slides as well in a second. You can take us away.
Yeah, so I think we might also put a copy of these slides, so the actual video itself, perhaps on the call website as well. We're running through this today and also tomorrow, so we'll probably look at which one is is the best run through in order to put that up on the website, so that people who couldn't attend these specific sessions can still hear the narration around the various different slides. So thank you ever so much for joining today. For those of you who don't know, I'm Emily Jefferson. I'm the director of the DARE programme, and so I'm just sort of setting the wider scene before handing over to others. So what we're trying to do today is give appropriate information for the TRE early adopter call. Next slide, please, Fergus. So this is a slide that we presented at the TRE Frontiers meeting back in October. So some of you may well be aware of this, but just putting it out there to put these things into context, but also for those of you who weren't able to attend that meeting. So what we're talking about today is a component of the DARE overall phase 2 programme, and that is the transformational programme. And this is to test new capabilities into production readiness, test for TREs to test and configure and adopt these, and then research using these new TRE capabilities. Next slide, please, Fergus. So the so what? So the idea is that the capabilities that we're delivering enable faster fit-for-purpose federated analytics across data domains for researchers, automation and faster, cheaper research, new research using AI models in TREs, less effort for researchers to move from one TRE to another, and a reduction in cost of TRE. So these are the main goals of the programme. So if we now look at how this call fits in with this, we have some fantastic leaders from the TREvolution programme, and these are the group of people who are delivering the new capabilities, and this was a closed call working with some programs that had previously put in a DARE driver programs, and it's all now integrated into one program. So these were separate programs, and they've come together into one overall program of work. And so that's a bid has been submitted. We know what it's going to what the plan is for that. And so this next call, if you can just click next, please, Fergus, is for TREs to work with the TREvolution programme, which you'll be finding out a bit more about it in a moment, in order to test, configure and adopt. Next slide, please. Next click. And then there's going to be future work working with the exemplar projects later on in the programme. Over to others.
Right, I think we're going to you here, Jim. Yep.
Yep. Thanks so much, everyone. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jim Smith. So as with all proposals, you have a big vision of what it is you're trying to achieve, which is full of lots of long words. But it is this idea that of building on standards where everything can be interconnected, the possibility to be federation level and federation ready, just to streamline an analysis with the ability to access to high performance compute where needed. And for me, the key to all of this, it's about researchers, because it's all about enabling research. And it's about researchers being able to interact with data using familiar tools, familiar workflows that they can find and repurpose from other places, as if it was all in one place. So that's the vision. We're not saying we'll get there in a year or anything daft, but the idea is that researchers can just treat stuff as if it's in one place. And in order to do that, we want our network to be based on platform independent common standards, so other people can build to that spec if they want to, enabled by reference implementations, but basically saying this is how it could be done to these standards, and supported by computational auto-assisted processes. So it's about saying where can machines help, where it's appropriate to do that, but keeping human oversight and public trust, because without that, we don't get to have TREs. And the bottom piece is obviously about we need to introduce everything very carefully while we're doing this. So we've got work packages around things like how do you go through that change of governance process? How do you take people comfortably through that process of moving towards adoption of new standards? How do we make sure that we're not maintaining those we're not undermining those foundations of trust? Next slide, please. So the themes identified in the call by Dare were very much around standards and implementations, federated analytics, and semi-automated output checking support for AI. And there had been these 3 driver projects, as Em referred to, and these all came through a series of conversations with Dare, and we're calling this thing in the middle Trevolution. So I've just outlined the vision and the objectives that we built this around. I think it's important that the first one of these is around common standards. It's about saying, to some extent, we've pulled apart the pieces of what we did before and we've rebuilt them into a more coherent whole around common standards for describing how we're going to do things, how stuff's going to work with metadata to match all that, in order to create real-time semi-automated decision support, standardizing computer analytics and compute environments, enabling this TRE network and maintaining the trust. And next click, please. And the important thing about all this design process, it is all about being cross-cutting so that it can fit in lots of different places and is informed by lots of different places and lots of different perspectives, which is where, of course, is where this particular call comes in. It's where the people here and in this come in. We do need to be practical. So the call spec talked about transitioning a minimum viable product to production ready. Different parts of this are moving up slightly different speeds, but there's some rebuild to all of it. And it's certainly the case that we're not claiming that you're going to be able to click a button, deploy everything, and have your federated analytics for large language models in 2 years' time. It's about being practical, about being sensible about what we can achieve and working with yourselves to achieve that, and doing it in a standardized way so that we're not saying everyone has to come to the party and it's our way or no way. Okay. Next slide, please. So in order to organise that, we've got joint leadership but shared responsibility. So Simon from Swansea is leading development of all the technical components around federated tooling, what you have to do to get TREs talking to each other in a useful, sensible way. Stian from Manchester is leading on the design of all the metadata and how those get brought into our infrastructure and to our various toolkits. I'm leading on the disclosure control aspects and the data governance perspective. Chris Cole from Dundee is leading on the Trevolution profile and how that integrates with a kind of Sartre++, and they'll also be building out an implementation of how this works as infrastructure as code. And Phil from Nottingham, who led the proposal, is leading the cross-program stuff and bringing in the connection to other already existed federated platforms and toolkits and international partnerships. So that came across as 5 disjointed. It's very much not. It's very much, there is leadership because you need leadership in teams, but we all are involved in each other's stuff. To make this practical, and given the spend profile, there's 3 time periods. So March 2025, we want as many people as possible to be involved with us through workshops and things, to have this really rapid design and co-design period of what it all needs to look like. Of course, we're not going to get everything done in a month, but we want to have the real firm understanding of what's going to be, of what it is we're going to build, making sure people are feeding into the bits that we hadn't thought about and so on in March. For the next year, we're focusing on rapidly creating stuff, focusing on deployability, lots of work going on around governance and PIE and stakeholder engagement to make, and compatibility with existing approaches. And then from 26 onwards, it's more about deployment of the things we built and refinement and responding to feedback to demonstrate these readiness. Okay, next slide, please. And I think over to Chris.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. So I'm Chris Cole. I'm a reader in health informatics at the University of Dundee, and thank you all for coming here. So what we're looking for is for a range of interests and activities from the community into work with us within the Treevolution project or program. And the idea is to be working together in a co-design, a collaborative way, and not just to work out what will work, but we also need to know what won't work. You know, we all have our own experiences, but they're not all encompassing and all inclusive. So we need to know what we have missed in our various things that we're trying to do. And then at the same time, we ask for all our partners to try these deployments, to try the implementations of things that we are developing throughout certainly the first year and a bit of what we're doing, and to give good and effective feedback so that we know what's working, what doesn't. So there's a rapid turnaround and so we can make sure that when we hit April 26, we're in a good place for real world deployments. As we all know, governance is really important in this space, and we need to have all the voices in the room so that we can move forward on improving the governance framework across the UK, not just in 1 or 2 of the nations, but we need to be 4 nations, and also cross-domain. We need to be looking at different types of data, not stick to our silos, so that then it is portable and reusable in as many areas as possible. And like I said, we all have our own tool sets and our interests and expertises. So we want to avoid the not invented here. We don't have a lot of time. We can't do everything. So we need to learn from each other and reuse as much as we can into a coherent and collective whole. So next slide, please, Fergus. So the potential activities there are in this pre-March 25 area is, there's lots of, I guess, background work and engagement work that can be done. So DARE are going to arrange some online meetings, not very many, but to give an initial view of the groundwork that needs to be done, and we are doing ahead of the March 25 kickoff and start for this program. And as you may be aware, this is phase 2 of a DARE UK program, and in phase 1, a lot of the aspects that we were dealing with here were in individual projects, and we had written reports based on those outputs from those projects. So we ask everyone to make yourself familiar with them. The main ones are Teleport, Terrifics, Sacra, and Sartre, and then use as many of the existing tools as you can and provide some feedback on that, what are the gaps and things like that. So for the Sartre specification, assess yourselves against the specification if you have a TRE, and feedback on that. The Grey Matter project, there were there was a range of recommendations made on how to support machine learning projects. So have a look at those and investigate how they fit within your organization or otherwise. And Sacro and SacroML were the spin-offs from Grey Matter. So there are some tools and existing software available. So download them, use them, check if they work, and importantly, include researchers in this process. It's not just an organizational issue, it's also researchers need to be involved in this. And then if you have any ML projects that are ongoing or are coming up, see if they're ones that you could be willing to engage with us on them. And data, we need data sets to try and test these environments and test these workflows, particularly on the federation aspect. So if you have any existing data sets or you need to initiate some approval processes for some synthetic data examples, for example, then please start that now so that we're ready to get the ball rolling when we need to. Next slide, please. So March 25 is going to be a lot of engagement. We're going to have a co-design workshop with PIE is a huge event or a huge part of DARE. And so we will be doing a lot of outreach with public and stakeholders. And again, like I said, the governance will start a governance program to understand where we sit and where we need to go in terms of the current setting. And we need everyone's insight in this. So it's very much a big tent approach. Next slide, please. And in the next phase, which is where we'll be building out the exemplars and the implementations and the MVPs, we will be leading on those activities, but we can't do that on our own. And so we will be working through the core components and working with mechanisms to interlink with all the TREs for a given project and see how those safe settings can be maintained within a federation and within a specific network. Sacro will be enhanced and deployed and understand the risk appetites and boundaries of that statistical disclosure control mechanisms. Governance will be built into all the phases as we continue. Again, public engagement and stakeholder activities will be regular and inclusive throughout certainly the first 6 months and probably the first year. And then, what does a safe deployment of AI, whether it's federated or otherwise, what does that look like? Next slide, please. And what we want is all engagement. Please engage, even if you're not sure how much you want to be involved in, even if you think it's going to be difficult or a challenge. We want to know, why do you think it's difficult and how do we remove those barriers? And we need to get information on what's good or bad of what we're doing. And engagement doesn't mean you're committed to actually using everything that comes out of this program. But it does mean that your voice will be included in what we do. And so others like you might get involved. Next slide, please. Right, and this is me handing over to Simon.
Hi, so I'm Simon Thompson from Swansea University, and just talking about a little bit more about the federated aspects. So the previous projects of Trifix and Teleport are going to get blended into a single platform going forwards and merge with a lot of the other initiatives that have been spoken about so far. So the sort of overall architecture that we're aiming for over time is to understand how we could define a profile for a TRE, what it would mean for a TRE to participate in a federated project. We're going to connect to create a secure mesh network, which basically is the interconnect between TREs to kind of provide secure, auditable connections between the various parties. We will work on what we're calling the front door or the director to kind of understand how do you orchestrate a federated project? How do you specify who's allowed access to what data, where, why, and so on and so forth, very strongly linked into information governance. And in here, we kind of see that the previous separated projects kind of collide a little bit because the previous Satcher project will define some of the aspects needed for the TREs above and beyond the Satcher Plus it was called earlier, to kind of go, well, what is the minimum standards and specification needed to kind of participate in a federated network? And Jim spoke earlier about the SACRO tool. Can we embed semi-automated disclosure control into the egress processes of TREs and understand how that could add benefit to the flow of a federated query or federated analysis? And then we really want to adopt international standards. So, for instance, the 5-state RO crate is a specification built by the previous project to kind of capture the order of the transaction, i.e. this is the query that came in, this is the data they touched, this is what happened, this is the answer, this is who did it, all of that information that leads to the FAIR principle. So we can kind of capture concisely and to an international standard of this is what happened when we did a federated analysis. Next slide, please. So I guess what's the ask? And I think the big ask is, at the beginning of 2026, have we done everything as a community to answer all of the concerns and fill all of the gaps that we could turn this thing on for real and do real science? This phase is not funding real science, but we want to be able to really work with everybody to kind of go, what are the barriers? What are the concerns? What are the technical controls or information governance controls that may or may not be needed to kind of operationalize this? So with that in mind, information governance, I think, is the key to federation. And there's very established information governance models across lots of the community, but we are going to need to adapt these or augment them or refine them. So, any and all work in information governance that can kind of feed into the thinking. So, it says start 2025. I think, any work prior to that means that we will have a more engaged discussion in March 25. I think information governance and acceptable models is a cross-cutting theme that's going to be all the way through the program. But I think the more that we can get the upfront view and knowledge of information governance models that might be acceptable or not, will really shape the design at the beginning and possibly save a lot of time and energy. So I think that's a real key focus. The other one is to look at, actual implementations of technologies in your environment, whether that be any of the existing tools or even if just looking and understanding things like GA4, GH tears and WERS and RO crates, just familiarizing yourself with those technologies is at least means that the conversations are going to be easier and faster. Because we are going to base everything on international standards, and some of these things can be a little bit complicated sometimes, and it takes a little bit of time for folks to get their head around how and why it's done this way. So, that would be a useful upskilling, if you like, of a community that means you can participate better. We think synthetic data is not a direct driver of this project, but synthetic data, I think, is going to really be needed to kind of flush the pipes and test governance models prior to going anywhere near real data. So again, the more synthetic data or synthetic-like data we can have across the community, the more that we can actually safely, actually demonstrate that this is possible. We are aiming for a full and proper all things met by the beginning of 26. So it's quite a short period of a year to kind of really hammer some of these things home. Obviously that's the target, but obviously in January 26 we are looking for, again, partners who have done this legwork, have understood what the ask is and could transition to possibly turning it on if it was safe and appropriate, and they could make their own judgment on that. But I think we know that we're not going to solve all problems across all domains. And we are not building the answer to life, universe, and everything. What we're doing is kind of building the plumbing and infrastructure that meets an information governance model and meets international standards. But perhaps the payload or the actual analysis platforms will start to diverse. And therefore, anyone who's got analytical federated solutions that can kind of plug in or be compatible with the proposed model, then they're more than welcome. There are a number of systems like Data Shield and Vantage 6. We are looking to plug them in. We're not going to replace them. The functionality that they bring today is the functionality they bring, but we want to kind of make it 5-SACE compliant and aligned to the information governance model that we eventually come up with. So, and obviously part of this is about public trust. So, working with PIE groups is going to be critical because we need to bring the public along with us. So again, all of that work could start tomorrow, and it could feed in, and the sooner it feeds into the process, the sooner it has a bigger impact as we start the main body of work from the beginning of next year onwards. Next slide. So this is Sacro, but even in Sacro here, Sacro is an established semi-automated disclosure control process. It's very mature on statistical data. It's very well documented. You could take this out today and give it a go and see what it does and what it doesn't do, and again, feedback as quickly as possible. But it's quite mature, and I think we could look at how could we embed it in output checking inside of TRE. How could we promote its use to researchers? It's ready to go now. So can we kind of push it as a thing, because it's going to be part of the solution going forwards. So again, socializing people to that idea. But like all the other things I've said so far, understanding where its boundaries are, where its weaknesses are, what things it doesn't cover, what things you'd like to see. If we can kind of get all that thinking going now, we can feed into the program of work starting in March next year. The big thing that Sacro is going to really do is look at AI and machine learning, and how do we safely release AI models from TREs, which is a big problem waiting to happen. The number of TREs that we run, this is already a massive problem. And obviously developing tools to kind of assess the risk of AI models and so on and so forth. I think there's lots of work here. And again, anybody who's facing these challenges today, this is a perfect community to get involved in and kind of feed in what the requirements are. It could be that we need new legal clauses. It could be that we need to change what information governance is. It could be we need to look at our own risk profiles and understand if we're being a little bit too strict against public good, etc. Jim, I don't know if I've missed anything on Sacro particularly.
I don't think so. No, I mean it's. I think the only thing perhaps worth mentioning is that we are going to rebuild Sacro around metadata and standards, but that will all be underneath the hood. But the reason for asking people to check the existing version, where some things are hardwired in, is to get as much feedback as possible. As if we're going to be changing it anyway, what else should we change? What else should we do? But the intention is all that it will be based on formal metadata capturing risks. In this case, it happens to be risks about the safe outputs, but in other cases, it will be about risks to do with safe settings and so on.
Fantastic. Okay, and next slide. And then and the ask about Sacro, which is a specification for a TRE. Obviously, again, is a mature implementation today, but doesn't cover some of these new aspects. It covers what is a safe TRE today. But as we redefine what a TRE is going to be in the future, perhaps by adding federation, by adding some of these tools, by adding AI models, the specification for what a safe TRE is going to need to evolve, of course. And that can only, as the previous project, that can only evolve with collaboration. Obviously, Chris, leading this work, has very strong opinions about where it should go, but it's a community-driven thing. So the more you engage, the more it gets correct. I think the specification for what safe means is a bit loose, and I think we should probably start talking about maturity. And going forwards, I think it's going to be critical that we can measure the maturity of a TRE. There are lots and lots of TREs, all built in different effigies of whatever someone's vision, and that's absolutely fantastic. Diversity is brilliant. That's where innovation comes from. But actually, we do therefore need to measure how mature is that TRE, how ready is it to participate for a certain different levels of sensitivity or certain levels of types of domains of data. So again, we're only going to get this right if we get the voice of all the community. So there's no point sitting back and saying, well, that I don't agree with that specification, and get involved then. And as Chris said earlier, perhaps have a go at Sacro 1, because if you disagree with some of those points, that's absolutely fantastic. It means you're ready for a discussion, in all fairness. So what can you do? I mean, we are looking also for the infrastructure over time will be infrastructure as code. So again, how do we transition from the many TREs today, which are slightly static? How can we build a reference implementation that kind of stands it up and demonstrates some of the principles behind Sacro? You know, how do we do that together? How can we bring the learning that's already out there? If people have got the Lego blocks for building a TRE, can they be contributed? Do we have to really build everything again and again and again? Can we best find the best out there and kind of construct it together as a reference implementation to kind of show the art of the possible? And then as part of this, we're going to be creating a test environment and demonstration environment, almost a sandbox environment to kind of see and understand and kick the tires of a lot of these things. Again, Chris, I hope I haven't butchered your slide. Is there anything I've missed on this particular
Not at all. Yeah, I do have strong opinions, and the strong opinions are we need to have this as a community reference, and that's how it's worked so well, and that's why it's been so successful and engaged right from day one. So I want to continue that into Sartre 2, which will be embedded within Treevolution. So it's not a separate project at all. It's just a familiar name that we're using at the moment, but it'll evolve into a core bit of Treevolution, like all the things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And Fergus, do you want to move on and finish the slides?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I mean, in the end, right, what this call is about, right? The TRE adoption call is really about, you know, it's on the slide here, but it's really about shaping Treevolution or TRE-volution, or I'm still pronouncing it. How should I pronounce it? Treevolution is the one. Yeah.
Revolution.
Treevolution. Okay. I think it's in Scotland. There's a difference between Scotland and sort of the rest of the country here, but okay, Treevolution. But yeah, it's really about shaping how Treevolution evolves, right? And it's really about engaging with the program as early as possible. And the reason that this call is in place is because we know that takes capacity, and that takes resource, and that takes some level of commitment, right? And effort. And so that's really what this call is about, right? This is about providing that capacity, that resource for early adopter TREs to come along on the journey. And it is going to be a journey. It's not, nothing is sort of predefined here in terms of, you know, we're going to do it this way. It's going to be developed together with you, right? The TREs in the UK. That's the idea here. Yeah, so come along, shape it, help us prioritize how we do this, help us define how we do this and what we do. And of course, you know, I think do some learning along the way as well, because there's definitely some learning to be done altogether. I think that's pretty much it then. I don't know if there's anything else from anyone to add. Basically, right now, what I do is open up the floor for questions. We hope that that information was useful, but if it wasn't, please ask any questions. You can direct them at specific leads. You can ask them generally. I would just open the floor. Matt. Matt, I'm not sure if you're talking. You're on mute. Okay. Matt, I think, okay, no worries. We'll let Matt sort out his mic and browser issues. In the meantime, maybe we'll go with, is that Surajit? I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. You're on mute.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. Very informative. It's definitely a new type of call, not like the regular call. So a lot to digest. But my question is that the data can come from Scotland, Glasgow. The data can still come from existing safe havens, and then the data is imported to your system, TRE, or just stays within the safe haven?
Shall I pass that one to you, Simon? Do you want to start?
Yeah, so the idea is not to lift and shift the data. The data stays in the TRES, safe haven, or any other name you want to give it. And what we really want to do is bring the analysis to the data, let it execute, and the answers effectively can egress into a central location to be combined for either further analysis or release. So we're not looking for a massive information governance change from existing TREs. We're kind of just looking for an evolution, hence the name of the existing models, to kind of understand that there's a federated construct across the UK.
And sorry, a follow-up question that if we involve another health board from England, how does it, I mean, again, does it stay, the data stays in the two separate places and the federated learning comes and works on both of them?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Jit. Matt, I'm not sure if your mic has been sorted. Do you want to come in? Okay, Matt's typing. For the benefit of everyone, I'll just read it out, Matt. So this sounds like the funding projects will be run in a highly collaborative manner. Yes, i.e. the pitches you select won't just be left for those places to deliver their stuff in isolation. That's correct. It will be a very regular co-design to ensure it fits into the bigger, yes, all correct, all 100% correct. Thanks, Matt. Any questions from anyone else? Michael? Michael, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Seems like we're all having some missions this morning. Okay, I think we've got you, Michael.
No, that was Tim.
Was that Tim? Okay. Sorry, Michael, we can't hear you. Maybe let me go to Tim, because I think we can hear Tim, and then we can come back to you, Michael. Just have a look at your settings, perhaps. Tim?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that was really useful. Thank you very much. I think so. We've got sort of like an idea of what we want to do. It's sort of, rather than focusing on one area, I think that it's sort of like, it's got potential for cross-cutting and sort of like, so, you know, I imagine that sort of like is not a bad thing. I'm hoping that's not a bad thing. And obviously it's going to be, you know, these things are as big as they can be, sort of thing. So, you know, I think somebody mentioned it at the beginning. We're not going to try and sort of like, you know, do too much in sort of like a call like this. But once we have the first sort of like, it's not really an administrative question, but once we put the first sort of application in, is there sort of like a phase where everything is looked at in the round and sort of like there's a discussion about how these could, how these can sort of like complement each other? Because I know you're sort of looking at collaborative sort of like approaches and there's much cross-working and stuff. Is that something that we want to happen, or how do we sort of like understand how we're gonna, you know, work with others across this? Because the implication is, you know, there's a resource implication and stuff like that, so I've got to be careful about that.
I don't know if Em, you're coming.
Yeah, okay. Can I just come in? Can I just come in there? So just to make really explicit, that I think is partly covered in the chat, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. This is for trusted research environments to work with the Treevolution program. So we are not looking for TREs to come up with their own way of doing things and put that forward and then bring this in. This is about saying the Treevolution program has developed some standard, working with international standards, reference implementations of those things, and what we're looking for is input from trusted research environments as to what works with that, what doesn't work with that. The information governance rules are still going to be in place, but it does require some understanding from information governance as to why these solutions still adhere to the information governance rules, because there is change involved. And so it's really about looking at these things from legal, information governance, technical components to really feed into and shape this program.
I mean, Tim, just to your question as well, because if I understood part of your question, I mean, this is sort of a big integrated approach, right? So there is the DARE UK sort of core team, if you like, and we have a role to play here, right? We're integrated with the Treevolution team, right? There's an integrated approach happening across the board here, and of course, those sort of early adopter TREs who are funded would be sort of woven into that integration as well. So was that? I think that was part of your question, if I understood it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and it's partly this is because sort of like, you know, sort of I'm not the main contact for CPRD here, but I'm just trying to sort of like understand how what we're thinking of will match up with the requirements as good as possible. But that's useful. That's really useful. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Surajit, you're on mute again.
Can we have some exploratory ideas built into the project? In the sense, just as an example, suppose we are working with genomic modality and hospital admission data, but we want to, let's say, include imaging, but we know that our TRE, within our TRE, that's a not currently very explicitly possible. So how do we kind of, we don't want to build it core on that, but also we want to kind of push the boundaries and test this. Can those be mentioned?
I mean,
Yeah.
again, sorry, Simon, do you want to come in?
Well, I guess if I understood your question correctly, I guess reasons for doing federation are a few, but one of the reasons is the data isn't available is a very good reason. So if your TRE doesn't currently have imaging, hypothetically, but has all the information, but another TRE has the imaging half of the story of life, that's a great use for federation, because the imaging data can't move because of its size and so on and so forth. Not even information governance. So sometimes it's about getting bigger number of people for the analysis, and other times it's actually joining data that can't currently be brought together into a single place.
But I definitely think bringing these things in, certainly as a discussion as how would we do this, how could we do this, is definitely something that's welcome, right? So yes. Chris, you want to come in there?
Yeah, just to add, I think that's also part of the maturity model, so we can see how mature all TREs are and what capabilities they have. And that's the point of the SATRA or the profile, the Treevolution profile we're trying to build is, then you can see which are your capable partners to work with you on a particular project. So if you want to do, really intense federated analysis, then there'll be a certain set of TREs you can work with. If you want to do large data sets of imaging that want to do some AR modeling on, then there'll be another set of TREs that you can work with. So that's the kind of idea, is that we have a UK-wide view of where our strengths and capabilities are, and then we can build projects around those. So I think, if you are highlighting questions and issues, that's good, and that helps us work out how do we include everyone.
Great, thanks, Surajit. Any other questions? Then we've got sort of just under 15 minutes left. Em?
Yeah, just while people are thinking, I just wanted to say, even though there will be some TREs funded via this call for early adopter testing of this to really shape the program, but we will still be running other things for all TREs out there, explaining where the program is up to, enabling them to input, in workshops and things, and also to adopt these things later on. So just if you're not one of the TREs that's funded to specifically do this collaborative work, that doesn't mean that you then can't work with the wider DARE program and the wider Treevolution program.
Yeah, thanks. And Michael, apologies, I forgot to come back to you. So have you sorted out your? Yeah,
can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the talk. That was really interesting. Yeah, no, I just had a question about kind of the emphasis on co-design, particularly in the first in Q1 of next year, and kind of what the expectation is on the projects to explicitly kind of plan their own co-design activities, or whether that is kind of something which will be facilitated through the kind of Treevolution work stream itself.
I mean, I've sort of touched on this earlier to Tim's question. I mean, part of this is DARE UK sort of core together with Treevolution will be coordinating a lot of that. That's not to say that's all that there is, right? I'm not sure if any of the leads want to come in here, but certainly we would be, as the DARE UK core team together with Treevolution, trying to facilitate that as much as we can, as much as we think is sensible. But Are there any other thoughts from the leads? Jim?
Well, I mean, I think it's safe to say that none of us believes in the motto that if you build it, they'll come. I mean, I think that co-design bit, if we're not getting people engaged in trying things back, feeding back in prototypes, and if we're not genuinely listening to what people say, then we'll build a white elephant. And I think there's wide recognition across the project that, you know, we want people to be engaged in working with us out and feeding back to us really quickly. You know, oh, that's good. That might work. That's not going to work. How does it need to be changed? Is that constructive criticism, is without which we can't deliver.
Thanks, Jim. Carol?
Thanks. I'm not technically a co-leader, but I am a godmother of this project. So I would say that when we have we know what TREs we'll be working with, this program is kind of settling out, we would act as one project. It's really only the way to make this work is to co-design means not just doing like we occasionally visit, it's actually co-design. So you're incorporated within the work program itself. So that way, I would think this would be quite closely coupled. Actually, this is not a kind of at arm's length, because as Jim says, if you don't onboard and bring this into the whole planning of the entire project, then you just build something that's a white elephant. So this is a bit strange because we've got multiple projects all funded and independently assessed and so on. But riding out the strangeness of the whole thing, by the time we get to actually start to deliver this, we'll be one team.
Thanks, Carol. Maybe just something to add there as well. I mean, Jim's put in to the chat something around the community group. So we haven't, so there's a Dare UK sort of phase 2 program of work, and this is a big part of that, but there are other components that we haven't really spoken about today. Michelle, we can maybe look at sending something. I think we've already got something published that sort of captures the rest of the structure for the program. So maybe we'll send that around. We're not going to get into that today, but if you're not aware, I'd be surprised if you weren't, but if you're not aware of the other sort of components of phase 2 of the program and how that all fits together, you know, we'll have a look at sharing something post this call. Also, just to mention that, you know, we do say this, there may be future funding opportunities for, you know, sort of mid to late adopter TREs as well, right? And that will again depend a little bit on how this funding opportunity pans out, given its, you know, the rapid nature and sort of the early adopter requirements. Not everyone is ready to be an early adopter. So there may be future funding opportunities, right, that will look like this, but that will depend on how things go. Great, thanks, Michael, for the question. Any other questions from anyone?
If
Okay.
nobody's asking, I'll ask another one. Sorry.
Please.
So, if our TRE has, let's say, compute restrictions in the sense that they don't have huge GPUs and CPUs for implementing AI techniques that we want to build in. So how do we go about using other TREs? Or the other question is that if you have a developed program, developed code for checking the statistical outputs, as you mentioned, how do we make sure that it can be integrated in our TRE, or is that part of the process?
The leads can come in here, but I would definitely say that's part of the process.
Okay.
But Simon,
Yeah,
Jim,
I guess
Yes.
two questions there, wasn't there, really? The first question of like, how do you access bigger compute than perhaps you got available to yourself? On the diagram, we did show, I mean, national level supercomputers are also in scope here, in the sense that, you know, we're talking to Isambard in Bristol, because they're a level of HPC that none of us will ever achieve. So we do need to understand how we burst to compute. That is going to be part of the design, and whether that's bursting to someone else's TRE or bursting to a national infrastructure. The information governance and security around it remain the same, and therefore we're trying to come up with a model where this is possible.
Chris, did you want to come in, or?
Yeah, I mean, just to say that this is, I think this is a common issue of, trying to get access to the right data and the right resources for researchers. And there are solutions out there, but if you don't know who to ask, then it feels very opaque. And this is what DARE is trying to do, is trying to make access to sensitive data for research easier and more tractable for researchers, and for it to be more consistent across the UK. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Glasgow or Manchester or Bristol, or Swansea, to be inclusive, then you can ask for data wherever. And it, I mean, obviously you have to go through the governance process and show evidence for all that. But so the whole thing is try and make that life a lot easier for researchers ultimately.
Thanks, Chris. Tim.
Yeah, just purely administrative. So the deadline's 9 o'clock, 10th of December. Is that right? In the morning. Okie dokie.
I'm looking at Michelle, but Michelle's nodding.
Okay, right. Better get my skates on. Cheers.
Okay. Michael.
Sorry, yeah, just one more kind of practical question around the application. So obviously there's a question in there about kind of like risks. Can we kind of attach, appendices like risk registers, that sort of stuff, or is that not a requirement or expected as part of this application?
I mean, I'll defer to Michelle, but I mean, we certainly want to see some sort of a risk register, right? There are clearly risks here, right? So I think laying those out in your context and for your application, certainly we want to see that. In terms of attaching a risk register.
Yeah, that is fine. Equally a Gantt chart as well if need be. Yeah, that's fine. As an appendices.
Yep. Is that clear, Michael? I don't know if it's a different point or you want to come in on this one.
Yeah, just come in. The form to apply has been designed to be quite lightweight, considering the tight turnaround and the sort of the sums and things involved. We're really just looking for kind of key reasons why you think that this will be of benefit for your TRE, and a real strong indication as the fact that you want to collaborate on the program, and why you think it works. It would work out for you and for the benefit of then further TREs coming to adopt some of these capabilities later on.
Did that answer the question, Michael? All good?
Yeah, great. Cheers, thanks.
Cool. Okay, couple minutes left, 4 minutes left.
I'll just add in there if there aren't any other further questions. The reason that this call has been designed like this is because the previous DARE programs, which already did some of this capability, we wanted to take forward because they'd already laid a lot of this groundwork. But we didn't want it to be a complete closed program where they, the particular group just sort of selected individual TREs to work with. We wanted this to be open to the whole TRE community, and we thought therefore that opening this up as a call for people to apply would be the fairest way of doing so. But we do envisage that this there will be further work with other TREs as well as this call.
Great. Surajit, please.
Yep. So I don't seem to be running out of questions. Can we, I mean, usually when you write a proposal, you kind of claim that we have the environment and capability of doing things. We are the, let's say, at the university level or CFM level. In this case, we can for this case, can we expose some of the limitations and say that the TREs, the Trevolution would be able to kind of plug it in? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can see the nodding heads everywhere. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And
I would-
letters of support are allowed, I'm guessing. Letters of support.
Yeah, so letters of support in general are allowed. You will remember we initially had the requirement of a letter of support from, essentially, we've dropped that requirement just to make that clear, but other letters of support as part of your application, of course.
Okay, great.
Good. Okay, 1 minute left. Any final questions? Maybe while you're thinking of any very quick questions in the minute that we have left, again, if there are any clarifications you need, specifically around the process or anything like that, the email address is there. Please do reach out to myself, well, Michelle and the team, the Dare UK team, and we'll facilitate that. Any questions in the last 30 seconds?
Nothing from my side. I'll pick up with you later, Simon.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
Really interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we'll leave it there. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining at short notice as well. And look forward to your applications. Have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Cheers.